Hey everyone, welcome back to Taking Back Monday. I am so excited that you decided to say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to a brand new future of work. And I'm more excited to introduce you to my new friend, Andrea. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Alyssa, for having me here today.
So let's get right into it, Andrea. What is your origin story?
Yeah, so I usually talk about like being from the sticks of Michigan and kind of being in spaces I never belonged and things like that. But when I thought about the topic of this podcast about taking back Monday, I'm kind of tell a little bit different origin story. And it's that first moment when I refused to accept limitations professionally, and how some of that has led to building a company that focuses on women never doing that in the first place. And so the spark kind of was I was a few years into my career. I felt like I was failing to launch. I had been a PhD student, and then I realized that wasn't the right thing for me. It was 2000, the dot-com bubble had burst. I went through a series of layoffs at tech companies and things like that. And I started to feel like I needed to do something to level up. And I had to happen to be in a friend group of some folks who were doing an MBA. And I remember it was an executive MBA. They were still working. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, they're not that executive. I'm like, they're project managers and engineers and salespeople. And it started to seem much more appealing. But I saw myself as potentially being an MBA student like them. And so my husband and I decided we went to an information session and we're like, we need to apply to Duke. This is going to be like a game changer. And I remember since it was a working professional program, I had to go get support from my then boss. And I remember my boss had just given me a performance review where he's like, Andrea, you're killing it. But I have nowhere to grow you. And I had that in the back of my mind. That was sort of the fuel for like why an MBA started to become really appealing to me. I was like, I need to take control of my career. I'm like, I'm doing great in all these jobs, but it's not getting me where I need to go. How do I be the architect of my own future? And I remember uh, when I made this decision, the support that I needed to get from him was like every other Friday off because it was a Friday, Saturday program. And I remember him kind of saying that he's like, well, if you don't get in this year, maybe next year. And he was still trying to be the architect of my future. And I remember this bold move where I said, I was like, this is my decision. And I told him, I said, whatever roadblocks you put up, where you're not going to give me Fridays off. If I have to drop my schedule, if I have to take PTO, if I have to take it unpaid, whatever, I said, whatever barrier you put up, I'm going to systematically take down because this is what I need to do for my career. And it was this kind of bold, first time I really boldly felt like I had cards to play because I was a really valued employee, but I wasn't uh, progressing at the rate that I wanted to. And it was a bit of like this, like I said, this recognition I had to take control of my career. And it was the first in a series of bold moves and pivotal moments. The second came when I was working in an organization and I was standing up a function that from a business unit that had a lot of just inherent challenges and conflict with the corporate infrastructure. I was innovating and they were staying the way that they were. And I was sort of set up to challenge all these things, but without a lot of support. And so I was constantly in this situation where I had to thread the needle and keep everybody happy, and nobody was happy. And my mandate was growth, and corporates was status quo, and all these types of things. And my boss just happened to be in a position at the time where he was either unwilling or unable to support me and my team in driving the change that we were mandated to drive. And I had spent 3 years fighting this battle and slowly making progress. And I was at my wit's end and I was on the verge of quitting. And my husband said to me, he's like, they need you more than you need them. Why don't you demand what you really want? And it was a Thursday night. And I remember sending a note to my executive vice president's assistant. And I'm like, I need to meet with him tomorrow morning. And I went into his office, confident as all get out, when I made three demands. I'm like, quitting this boss. I don't want to quit the company, but I'm quitting this boss. I want to report to you. I want to be on your executive team and I want a VP title. And here are all the reasons this is good for you. And he was like so taken aback. Um, and eventually, over the course of probably half a year, I got all of those things. And I think that sort of this revelation, right, is that it's like we have to be our own agent of our careers, our lives. We are conditioned sometimes to accept less than what we deserve. It's like, and while the systems need to be built to support us better, it's like within each of us, it's like, what power do we have to exercise? What risk are we willing to take? I mean, now I look at what we're doing with Quantum Bloom, where we focus on supporting early career women in STEM as they transition from their college life into their first professional jobs. And how do we help them build that agency, confidence, courage, self direction really early so that they never have sort of been conditioned to accept scrap, that they've always demanded better, had their sort of vision clear, and made sure that they put themselves in environments that facilitated that growth, that facilitate that growth and shape it from within, right? It's like if I feel confident that I can um, if I see that pathway, if I believe that I can be successful and I understand the conditions for that to happen, I can go ask for those things. I can be the leader in it rather than waiting for someone to invite me to something, invite me to the table, or, you know, give me a promotion or whatever. Go ask for the things. Right. And I really think that once we learn that, and that you start taking those risks, and the sky doesn't fall when you do take those risks, that it sort of beget more courage and it sets you up on a path of really doing some pretty outstanding things.
There's a lot in there that I want to dive into, but first I want to dive into I'm going to use the word audacity, and I mean that in the best way. I recently had a conversation with one of my coworkers, and I said, I think I just need to have more audacity because there are mediocre men in my orbit who are getting things that I can't believe they're actually achieving, and it's because they're asking to do things, and they're going out and they're asking to do it, and they're pushing for it, and they're self-advocating. And meanwhile, I'm over here like, hey, I have really cool stuff, come play in my sandbox. And I'm, a little more crickets, but I realized I don't have as much audacity as they do.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of gender dynamic in that where women are so conditioned to be agreeable. We're conditioned to be good team players. It's looked down upon if you advocate for yourself, sell your ideas, self promote. And society gives us those messages frequently and loudly. And if we let them seep in and become our own talk tracks, our own thought patterns, it's like they win. Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to be prepared. The world still doesn't accept women who have a strong point of view. But when we stop caring, when we stop caring about what everybody else's sort of perspective of me is and really start coming from a place of self-knowing, it's that agency, audacity, like grit, whatever we want to call those things. It's like it's the key to unlocking so much good stuff when you're not holding yourself back. Society's going to try and push it down and hold you back, but it's like if you don't buy into it, it's like that's half the battle.
Yeah. I was kind of getting prepared for our conversation, and then I remembered a situation that I had back in college, right? So I could have used Quantum Bloom for sure because I was in a senior seminar, and my university did a great job of like trying to make sure we were all prepared to go interview for jobs, right? All of the tips, write a handwritten thank you, come with your resume,
Mhm.
how to dress, all that. And we had a guest speaker come in one time who was talking about interviews and interview skills. And one of the things he said, I'm normally not like a person who reacts very publicly to things, but one of the things he said was, and ladies, if you're engaged, make sure you leave your engagement ring at home because they're not going to hire you if they think you're just going to get married and have babies and not, like work the first couple of years. And I remember sitting there just like flabbergasted that he would
Mhm.
one say that, and that two, it was probably rooted in some level of truth, right? And so I had a conversation with my seminar professor after, and I was like, hey, I didn't appreciate that. Like, if the company doesn't want women who are married, then I don't want to work for that company anyway, and we might as well not go forward on the interview. I'd rather not get the job.
Right. Well, and that's the thinking we need. It's not like, do you accept me? Am I worthy of you? It's like that has to be a marriage where it's like an organization has to be worthy of your talents, worthy of your skills. It's not one way. And I think for so long we're conditioned to accept what's given, accept what's offered, accept the status quo. And until we stop being a part of the problem, and I want to clarify that, but we, as long as we play these rules in these systems, we're complicit to the underlying structural problems.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons, very good ones, your livelihood being the top of the list for why we sometimes accept these things as, our destiny. But until we really start bucking the system in mass, the systems are going to keep doing what they do. And so how do we all build courage in ourselves, exercise that courage? Because to me, courage becomes contagious. Every time that I tell this story about when I quit my boss and not the company, or when I told my prior boss about how I was, I'm going to business school if I get in, come hell or high water, it's like you can see the room light up with like, you mean I can do that? Like I
Right.
can make such demands, and for women, it is framed as demand,
Yeah.
right? That she wants all of this, and it's like, but we have to, in our own mind, let some of that narrative fall by the wayside and reframe that as like, I want to self actualize. I want to be the person that does breakthrough work. I'm never going to do that waiting to be invited. Right. And my business partner talks about this where she was at a women in tech conference, and she was, it was just a cringy moment where there was some very senior woman that stood up and said, remember the time when you were first chosen for something, right? Like chosen for some development program or some plum project or whatever. Like the idea of waiting to be chosen
Right.
just is like nails down a chalkboard for me now. It's like we make things happen. We have so much opportunity, especially with technology and the opportunity to build sort of platforms around your ideas and reach out to reporters and employers and influencers and all sorts of things that it's like you have to have the idea, the ambition, and then there's so much that's at your fingertips these days to go make it happen. It's like I reach out and I like when I was working in this business, I realized started with this startup. I realized semiconductors were going to be a big part of our uh, target market, and I'm like, okay, I need to influence the influencers. The National Science Foundation is a key influencer and player in the STEM workforce. And I reached out to all the National Science board members. And I'm like, hey, would love to talk. This is what I'm doing. Would love to pick your brain. And one of the National Science board members reached back out to me and said, oh, I'd love to talk to you. And then this turned into a series of conversations. And then he's like, oh, every time I get off the phone with you, Andrea, you give me something new to think about. And I'm like, but if I didn't have the courage, gumption, chutzpah, whatever you want to call it, to just cold call the National Science Foundation board, it's like those conversations would have never happened. If I waited for them to find me, they'll never find me. Right.
And I think, self-reflecting, right? Looking in the mirror in these
Mhm.
podcast conversations, I think I and a lot of women like me put the signals out there and expect people to pick up what we're putting down, right? Instead of just
Mhm.
blatantly asking for what you want. And a lot of my, experiences and leadership stories are about parenting my children because that's the season of life that I'm really in right now. And
Yeah.
so, like, for example, my 10-year-old, he doesn't see a pile of dishes and think to himself, like, oh, I should do the dishes, right? He sees a pile of dishes and says, okay, that's a pile of dishes. And so, what we've been doing this summer is like, hey, we're going to be very explicit. On Monday, we do trash and cardboard. And on Tuesday, we're scrubbing sinks and toilets. And on Wednesday, we're picking up and tidying up, and on Thursday we're vacuuming. But if I didn't make that explicit for him,
Mhm.
it doesn't occur to him, right? He doesn't pick up my
Right.
signal of like, hey, I think you should vacuum the floors, right? So how do we as women learn to stop dropping hints and start
Mhm.
being direct and open and honest about what we are looking for?
Yeah. And again, we get punished off it, especially in the workplace for being direct, right? Our expectation is to be warm and accommodating. And when women are direct and assertive, we get labeled all the things for the same behaviors that is celebrated in men. And so there's realities here on the how palatable these changes in behaviors are. And while that's the reality, we're never going to get on the other side of them by not challenging them, by continuing to sort of accept them. And that takes courage and it takes willingness to accept the consequences. That's the other thing. If you boldly go live your life, if you boldly go ask for what you want, you have to also be prepared for people fundamentally not being responsive to that. And how do you protect your downside if you're going to live courageously? And sometimes that means that, or all the time, I would say that means that you have your financial house in order, that you have strong networks, that you never feel totally dependent on one employer, that you continue to build your skill sets, your relevancy, all sorts of things. But we have to start one by one challenging in day to day interaction systems that are holding us back.
So let's project into the future, right? I'm successful, I've made it, I've learned to be audacious, I've learned to do all of those things. For me though, it's important to make sure that I'm not slamming the door on the women behind me. So if I'm a leader who's made it, if I'm a woman who wants to make sure that nobody has to work as hard as I did to see success, what would you have them do? What's the number one thing you would have them do to make sure there's a smoother path in our stead?
I think recognizing, being willing to recognize progress when you see it. Like, and what I mean by that is that sometimes women who make it to the top have fought even worse systems of oppression, right? Uh, they've had to finagle their way to the top. They've had to play the game. They've had to contort themselves. Um, and because you get there and you do all those things, there's sometimes this, well, I did it. Um, why should you get it easier? And when it took us 10 years and the person coming up behind you is asking for and pushing for that level of achievement in 5 years, we cannot sit there and say, wait your turn. We have to recognize that that's progress. When it took you 10 and it's taking them 5, that is literally the signal of progress. And our frame of mind has to be around those moments when we we set aside all of our own hardship and all of those things and recognize a new paradigm is emerging. And then we become like fuel on the fire for that. It's like that like using our power, privilege, resources to continue to encourage that, not stifle that, to continue to use our voice once we get to the top to challenge uh, systemic issues rather than coach down to accommodate. You know, I was at an event a couple of weeks ago and there was a panel of very accomplished women who worked in finance. And it was just so unsettling to me that the feedback and recommendation advice to the audience for women wanting to rise in finance was to learn how to play golf and drink scotch. And I'm like, this is not how women leaders at the top need to be coaching the next generation. Women leaders at the top need to see that woman where they're getting there faster and celebrate it, not chastise them because their path was harder. They need to be using their power, privilege, voice, whatever it might be, to dismantle the system, interrupt the system, call out the executive who says something misogynistic. Like they have to be the leaders of change. And oftentimes they they become keepers of status quo. And I don't think it's intentional. I think that's also a long conditioning of what you had to do to get where you are. Um, but it is really incumbent upon women who have arrived to really use those platforms to drive system change, because the change is not coming if we are not the ones that do it. We can't rely on the guys aren't going to drive these system level change. It has to be women with power, influence, and money to drive the change.
Well, and just because golf and scotch worked for you doesn't mean that it should have to work for the next person. Now, if you're a woman who loves golf and scotch, more power to you. But like, I don't want to have to pick up new hobbies that I don't really enjoy, or like grit my teeth through something simply because it's the only way, quote unquote, to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, this whole idea of like just plug your nose and vote, right? It's like, no, it's like we need to demand better. Um, and I don't think it was working all that well. There was a cost. Every time a woman assimilated into something inauthentic to them, it's like there is a cost that may not be apparent. You might not even acknowledge it or name it, but there are a lot of women who get to a certain point and they don't know who they are anymore. Oh, and they've realized they've self sacrificed and changed themselves. And to what ends? Because they have, and they're exhausted. They're
Yeah.
exhausted by all this extra work of fitting in and being palatable and all those types of things.
Yeah. Well, let's have a future of work where everybody, no matter who you are, is your true authentic self. You're doing good work. There's no games, there's no BS. Like, let's just, if we're going to do this thing 40, 50, 60 hours a week, let's be who we are during that process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like I led my teams that way. Um, Authenticity was like a primary value of our team, building a sense of belonging. You show up, you do your best stuff. I don't expect you to be all things all the time in all categories. It's like, let's figure out your special genius. Let's align you to the work that brings you joy, that also serves the company sort of objectives. It's like, those are the roles of leaders, is to find, the genius in in individuals and help them become their best selves. And sometimes you have to have hard conversations where it's like, you're not the right fit. And it's like, you will be better served if you were in an organization like XYZ or doing work that was more like, A, B, or C. And I think, that comes from having a sense of self and knowing yourself and being able then to route yourself into things that bring you the most fulfillment. And
Yeah,
when
I
you
have.
get into these, oops, go ahead.
Oh no, I have when I was young in career and I would have employees and they would like get new jobs and move on. I was always a little sad by that. But then my perspective changed and I started thinking about not them moving on to a new job, but them graduating from me, right? Like it wasn't the right fit for them anymore. And that has nothing to do with me and has everything to do with the fact that we developed them and gave them amazing skills and they've graduated on to their next bigger, better
Yes.
opportunity. And once I changed that perspective, I went from having employees who moved on and never really talking to them again to having employees who've moved on and are now tagging me in their posts. Like I have a former employee who just got accepted to a PhD or master's program, I can't remember, to do data science at Johns Hopkins University. And she tagged me as one of the reasons she's made it to that point. And like, we haven't talked in a long time, but she left on good terms because she graduated from me. And changing that perspective changed my approach to how I build teams with my relationships with my team.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not, I was thinking about for some reason today in the shower, no idea why, but I was thinking about this notion of this outdated notion where an employee's job is to make their boss look good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, no, no. It's the boss's job to make that employee thrive.
Yeah, and if you want the team to look good, you want to look good, make your team look good. If you're in a leadership people role, there is nothing better compliment for me than people praising my team and talking about how incredible they are because I'd be like, "Hell yeah, I know. They're incredible. That's why we all work together. That's why we hang out."
Yeah. Yeah. And yet still, I feel like there's some of these old, outdated, archaic ways of working that
Yeah.
no longer serve a purpose. And we haven't sort of flipped the script and the narrative around these things. I was doing a podcast actually not too long ago about teams and teamwork. And it's like, what do great teams sort of look like? And this notion of everybody bringing their best selves into that room and knowing their strength and leaning into those strengths and the respect that comes from, I bring this to the team and you bring that to the team. I bring this style to the team and you bring this style to the team. And we have a respect for our differences
Yeah.
rather than an expectation that we all start to look like one another in order to get along. And we have to be able to bring together disparate pieces to build beautiful things. And conflict is going to be part of that process. Conflict is a mechanism of collaboration. It's like, if you really bring diverse folks together, diverse perspectives, you have to know how to deal with, I come from this perspective, I view the world from this lens. And it's like, and how do we take those perspectives and build something that's uniquely different and combines those points of view? But you have to be able to negotiate conflict. And sometimes I think we are so conflict avoidant because it's viewed as so bad. And it's like, if we're going to be diverse, if we're going to be collaborative, it's like, everybody buckle up. We have to also be able to work through conflict.
Yeah. Andrea, if someone is really looking to learn more, who else should they be listening to? Who is leading the charge? Who is taking back Monday?
The next generation. I would say that when I look at Gen Z, and I don't have to look that far. And I think my kids are maybe alpha. He's 15. My daughter turned 12 yesterday. But one of the things, it was a couple of years ago, my son was like maybe 12. I was still in corporate. And I remember, oh, look, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he's like, I don't know, mom, but I sure as hell don't want to be what you and dad are. And it was a gut punch. And then fast forward a couple of years when I have ventured out now on my own in this startup with my business partner, Anne, who's amazing. And it's like, and we're doing this brand new breakthrough kind of work around early career development. And my son for Christmas got me a Morse code bracelet that said badass.
I
And
love
I'm
that.
like, oh, right. I'm like, and so he's, it's like he saw this transformation, a change in me. And I watch my kids grow and what these next generations represent. And I just celebrate their refusal to wait their turn, their resourcefulness to do things. My son and his buddies at 14 started a landscaping business. They had a website, swag. They were like buying equipment. They were doing all sorts of stuff with the money that they earned. And I was so proud of what they were doing. It's like they weren't waiting their turn. Right? They weren't waiting for someone to invite them to go, mow people's yards. And they don't have this pay your dues kind of mentality, which might frustrate the hell out of everybody that did. But there's something beautiful in people recognizing their own capabilities and their own genius and putting it out there. And so I don't know if this next generation will ever accept scary Sundays. If it's a scary Sunday, they're going to go vote with their feet and go find something better. Granted, the, kind of employment environment might dictate that they have to suck something up for a while, but given their own sort of terms, it's like they'll keep moving until they find those places. And I think that's awesome. And I think that those that are in existing power in organizations really need to start paying attention to the expectations of the next generation. They're incredible and they want work-life balance and they want values alignment and they will see through your performative sort of words and look at your actual, behaviors. And I think that's good for us. I think it's really good. The other, just because I'm of this age on who's taking back Monday, perimenopausal and menopausal women. It's like there's a woman that I follow on social media and she has started the I Do Not Care Club. And it's hilarious because she's got a pair of readers like mine on her head, on her face, tucked into like her shirt, 3 pairs of readers on her body. And she's part of the I Do Not Care Club. And it's like, I do not care if you haven't eaten all day and dinner's not on the table. Like, and again, there's something about women letting go of these roles of performing and pleasing and often playing small and just finally saying what they think and finally letting go of sort of the confines and the cages they've been put in. And I think that's amazing to see my peer group refusing sort of these old models. And, they're leaving corporate America in droves. It's like senior level women, they're going and hanging a shingle. They're like, I can do something different and in a better way on my own than having to keep playing these games. And so I think that's kind of awesome. So I look at the oldest kind of women who are kind of coming of a certain season, and then the youngest ones, and I'm like, I think they're taking back Monday.
I love it. And if someone is really connecting with you, if they want to learn more, where can they find you online?
Yeah. So individually, I'm on LinkedIn, Andrea Mohamed, Mohamed. Oftentimes I get more M's in there than needed. And, I write quite a bit on LinkedIn, and it's like, I feel like it's a super powerful platform. We have a website, quantumbloom.com, as a startup getting a .com. It's kind of cool. Made that happen. So those are the two primary ways. I'm a very open networker. I love meeting people. Alyssa, I don't even remember how we met, but I'm sure it was from LinkedIn and some
I
random
think
DM.
someone was on the podcast and said you have to meet this person and made the connection for us. Something like that.
Oh, Christy.
Yes.
Was
Yes,
it
Christy.
Christy Straw?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
She's like a rock star badass too. Love her so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for taking back Monday with me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Taking Back Monday, where we say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to meaningful and fulfilling work. If you enjoyed today's episode, let's connect on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you found value here, share the podcast with your network. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us inspire more leaders to join the movement. Until next time, let's take back Monday.